Hello friends, good morning and welcome to EduSite live lectures. Dear friends, today in microeconomics we will be talking about inefficiency under monopoly and equilibrium under monopolistic competition. To discuss this topic, we have with us our subject expert Professor Kamlesh Kakkad. Professor Kakkad is professor in Institute of Management Study and Research at Maharishi Dayanand University, Rohtak. Professor Kakkad has 36 years of teaching experience and she has written several articles in national and international journals and has written a book as well. Without further ado, I would like to welcome ma'am to our studios and request her to start the lecture. Welcome ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Dear viewers, till now we have discussed about how the price and output is determined under perfect competition and monopoly. In today's lecture, we are going to discuss about the allocative inefficiency under monopoly and measurement of monopoly power. Under monopoly, resources are misallocated, causing loss of social welfare. Monopolist charges a price greater than the marginal cost of production. This results in loss of consumer welfare. To find out the social cost of monopoly, we have to compare the welfare defined as the sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus under monopoly and perfect competition. Dear students, we should know, and we have already done also, what is consumer surplus and what is producer's surplus. Consumer surplus is the difference between what a consumer is willing to pay for a commodity and what he actually pays for the commodity in the market. While producer surplus is the difference between what a seller must receive from the sale of a commodity and what he actually gets from the sale of a commodity. Keeping these concepts in mind, we can find out what is the social cost of monopoly. You know, equilibrium is always at where MC or marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, and in case of monopoly, AR and MR are not equal. So, the monopolist charges more than the marginal cost of production. So, we show here in the diagram or figure number 1. We have shown output on x-axis, on y-axis we have shown price, cost and revenue. Under perfect competition, you know that the demand curve is perfectly elastic, and that is why AR is equal to MR in that case, and price is determined by the industry and firm has no control over the price. So, in that case AR and MR coincide, and we are now here talking of the constant cost conditions. In case of the constant cost conditions, as the scale of production rises, economies of scale and diseconomies of scale become equal to each other or they balance each other. So, the per unit cost of production remains same, it does not change. So, in this case average cost is equal to marginal cost, and this is a line parallel to x-axis. So, we have shown AC is equal to MC as parallel to x-axis, and MC curve is also the supply curve of the firm. Now, under perfect competition, equilibrium is where the demand is equal to supply or where MC is equal to MR. So, it will be at point K because AR and MR are same. So, at K we find that output produced is OM and the price charged is OP1 under perfect computation. And you can see what is the consumer surplus here. For OM units of the commodity, consumer is ready to pay ODKM. This is the amount he is willing to pay for OM units of the commodity. But the actual payment is O, P1, K and M. So, DP1K is the consumer's surplus in this case of perfect competition. And now we will see what happens when there is a monopoly. In case of monopoly, demand curve is downward sloping, like DD1 is the demand curve faced by the monopolist, and this is also the AR curve, but MR curve is declining and below it. So, we see where is the equilibrium? Marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue and MC is cutting MR from below. So, this is point E, and at E what we find that output is OM1 and the price charge is OP2. So, what you see here, that price charged is more than what the price is being charged under perfect competition, and output is less. Under perfect competition, this output was OM, but under monopoly, this output is OM1. Now, due to increase in price of the commodity, consumer surplus decreases. Now, the new consumer surplus is DP2L. So, this is the consumer surplus under monopoly, and the decline is consumer surplus is P1, P2, L and K, and you find that this comprises of two parts. One part is P1, P2, L, E, and this rectangle actually shows the profit of the monopolist. This is the abnormal profit, because this is the difference between average revenue and average cost. P1, P2 is the per unit profit, and P1, P2, LE are the total profits accruing to the monopolist. So, this is a redistribution of income from consumer to the monopolist. But the other part, LEK, that is also the fall in consumer surplus, and that part is not covered by profit to any other party. So, this is the deadweight loss in consumer surplus, or you can say this is the social cost of monopoly. So, LEK is the net loss suffered by the consumers because the monopolist is producing less and price charge is more. And actually the deadweight loss is the loss in surplus suffered by some group, maybe they are consumers or producers, that is not offset by rise in surplus to some other group. The complaint about the monopoly is that monopolist produces too few units, not that it earns profits. If the government expropriated the profits of the monopolist through a special levy so that it earned no profits, the objection to the monopoly would still remain, because the monopolist produces less than a competitive industry would produce. So, it employs too few factors of production. The unused factors find employment elsewhere in other industries, with the consequence that too many resources are being employed in other competitive industries scattered throughout the economy. The output of other industries in the economy are larger than they would otherwise be if the monopolist had to set a competitive price. Thus, it can be concluded that monopoly causes misallocation of resources and consumers' loss of welfare. So, we have seen that under constant cost conditions, there is a loss in consumers' welfare. Output produced by the monopolist is less. So, when output is less, employment of resources will also be less. So, more resources would be employed in other industries. That is why we say that monopoly leads to misallocation of resources. So, this was about the case of constant cost conditions, and now we will see what happens when there are rising cost conditions. In case of increasing cost conditions, we will see that again there is a deadweight loss and there is a loss in welfare due to reduction in output by the monopolist, and this will result in reduction in consumer surplus as well as in producers surplus. This is shown in figure 2. Now, what happens under increasing cost conditions? So, whenever the scale of the industry is increased, there are economies of scale and diseconomies of scale accruing to the firm. And when these diseconomies are greater than the economies of scale, then naturally there would be increase in the per unit cost of production. So, in that case, average cost increases and marginal cost of production also goes on increasing. So, we will show this in figure 2. In figure 2, output is shown on x-axis, price, cost and revenue are shown on y-axis. Average revenue is declining in case of monopoly and marginal revenue is below it, and marginal cost is rising due to the increasing cost conditions. And in case of perfect competition, we know that price is determined by the intersection of demand and supply. So, AR curve is the demand curve and MC curve is the supply curve of the industry under perfect competition. So, equilibrium is at EC, equilibrium in competitive market, and at this point you find that output produced is OM and price is OPC. So, this is the price chart under perfect competition, and every firm can sell any amount of the commodity at this price. Now, we will see again what is the consumer surplus at this price. When the consumer wants to buy OM units of the commodity, he is ready to pay O, D, E, C and M. This is the total payment he is ready to pay, but the actual payment is O, P, C, E, C and M. This is the payment done by the consumer in the market. So, the upper triangle D, P, C, E, C is the consumer's surplus under perfect competition. Now, we will see what happens when there is a monopoly. In monopoly, equilibrium is where MC is equal to MR. So, MC is equal to MR at point EM for equilibrium under monopoly. Here the output produced is OM1, which is less than OM, and accordingly the price is equal to the AR or up to the point on demand curve, and this is M1A, or OPM is the price charged by the monopolist. So, price has increased and output has fallen. So, due to increase in price, there is decline in consumers surplus. Now, the consumer surplus is DPMA, and decline in consumer surplus is of the area PCECA. This is the total decline in consumer surplus, and out of it the area which goes to the monopolist as profit is PCPMA AB. This part is going to the monopolist as supernormal profits. Again, the per unit profit is PCM, which is the difference between AR and this part, and this profit will be going to the monopolist, but the remaining triangle ABC is not going to anybody. So, this is the loss in consumer surplus, which is not covered by gain to any other party. So, this is the deadweight loss of the due to the monopoly, and there is a fall in producer surplus also. When there is perfect competition, producer surplus is OPCEC, but now under monopoly this producer surplus declines by EMECB. This small triangle is the loss in producer's surplus due to the monopoly and due to the rising cost of production. So, what you see here, that total net loss is the triangle ABEC plus BEMEC. So, this is the social cost of monopoly under increasing cost conditions because of the increased price and reduction in output. So, we have seen that how the producer surplus also decreases. So, the social welfare is not maximum here, rather it is reduced. So, maximum social welfare or economic efficiency is achieved when the sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus is maximum. Thus, under monopoly there is misallocation of resources as production is less than the optimum output, where social welfare is maximum. Now, we will see what do we mean by measurement of monopoly power. Professor Lerner gave a measure of monopoly power. He regards perfect or pure competition as the state of social optimum or maximum welfare, and any departure from it indicates the presence of monopoly power leading to misallocation of resources or state of less than social optimum. In perfect competition, price is equal to the marginal cost of the product in equilibrium position. So, social welfare is maximum due to equality between price and marginal cost. In case of imperfect competition, demand curve facing a firm is downward sloping and MR curve is below it. Due to this equilibrium position, marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, but price is higher than marginal cost or marginal revenue. So, according to Professor Lerner, this divergence between price and marginal cost is an indicator of the existence of monopoly power. The greater this divergence, the greater is the degree of monopoly power possessed by the seller. So, actually monopoly power refers to what is the difference between price and the marginal cost. So, formula for finding out the monopoly power is degree of monopoly power is equal to price minus marginal cost upon price, where P denotes the price of the product, MC is marginal cost at the equilibrium level of output. Under perfect competition, as price is equal to the marginal cost, so degree of monopoly power will be 0. How? Price minus marginal cost upon price would be equal to, because MC is equal to P. So, P minus P would be equal to 0, and 0 divided by P will be 0, because when 0 is divided by anything, the result is 0. So, under perfect competition, because the price is equal to the marginal cost, so there is no monopoly power with the firm. That is why there the firm has no control over the price. But under monopoly, price is greater than the marginal cost. So, that is why there is a monopoly power. And if a commodity is a free good and its cost of production is 0, in that case MC will be 0. So, what would be the Lerner's index of monopoly power in that case? That would be price minus marginal cost upon P is equal to price minus 0, because MC is 0 divided by P. So, this would come as P upon P, this will be equal to 1. Thus, Lerner's index of monopoly power can vary from 0 to unity. You can see if the price of a product is rupees 15 per unit and its marginal cost is equal to rupees 10, then value of the index of monopoly power is equal to 15 minus 10 upon 15. This would be equal to 5 upon 15 is equal to 1 upon 3. And when price is equal to rupees 20 and marginal cost is equal to 10, then value of index of monopoly power will be 20 minus 10 upon 20. This is equal to 10 upon 20 is equal to 1 upon 2. So, you see that greater the value of index P minus MC upon P, the greater is the degree of monopoly power possessed by the seller. Now, we will see what is the relationship between monopoly power and elasticity of demand. Lerner's index of monopoly power is equal to price minus marginal cost upon price. In equilibrium, we know marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. Therefore, Lerner's index of monopoly power would be equal to P minus MR upon P. From the relationship between AR, MR and elasticity of demand, we know that marginal revenue is equal to price multiplied by 1 minus 1 upon E, where E is the absolute value of the price elasticity of demand at the equilibrium output. Putting P into 1 minus 1 upon E in place of MR, we get Lerner's index of monopoly power as P minus P multiplied by 1 minus 1 upon E the whole divided by P. This is equal to 1 minus 1 plus 1 upon E is equal to 1 upon E. This formula implies that Lerner's index of monopoly power is equal to the inverse of price elasticity of demand. So, degree of monopoly power can be judged by knowing the price elasticity of demand at the equilibrium output. Lower the absolute elasticity of demand, the greater is the degree of monopoly power. So, dear students, in this lecture we have seen how the monopoly leads to misallocation of resources, what is meant by the monopoly power and how it is related to the elasticity of demand. Thank you. Dear viewers, in this module I am going to tell you about how the price and output is determined under monopolistic competition. Monopoly and perfect competition are actually not found in reality. Rather, there are other markets which show the characteristics of both monopoly and competition. So, that is why today we are going to talk about monopolistic competition. In real world, firms are found to be enjoying internal economies of scale which are incompatible with the theory of perfect competition. Pyros Rafa, a Cambridge economist, was the first to point out the limitations of competition or monopoly analysis. Harold Hotelling emphasized that the actual firms were neither perfectly competitive nor purely monopolistic. Between these two extremes of pure monopoly and pure competition, there are all gradations in which both the monopolistic and competitive elements are present. The market forms which combine the elements of both competition and monopoly have been designated as imperfectly competitive markets by John Robinson. These markets are broadly of two types, monopolistic competition and oligopoly. And in today's lecture, we will discuss about monopolistic competition. So, what are the important features of monopolistic competition? Number one is a large number of firms. In this form of market, there are a large number of firms, each satisfying a small share of market demand for the product. Due to large number of firms, there exists stiff competition among them for selling their product. Another important feature is product differentiation. The products of various firms in a monopolistically competitive market are similar but differentiated, which means that they are close but not perfect substitutes. Product differentiation is the basic characteristic of monopolistic competition, which distinguishes monopolistic competition from perfect competition. Various types of toothpaste like Forhan's, Colgate, Binaca, Pepsodent, Promise, etc. are similar but differentiated products. In the similar way, you must have seen there are different varieties of shampoos, different varieties of oils, different varieties of bathing soaps. They are close substitutes, but they are differentiated from each other. Then another feature is some influence over the price. Due to product differentiation, each firm has some control over the price. If a firm reduces the price of its product, it will attract some customers to switch over to its product. If it increases the price, it may lose some customers to other firms producing other varieties of the same product. So the firm is not a price taker. It has some monopoly power due to its differentiated product. Thus, under monopolistic competition, a firm has to choose a price and output combination which will maximize its profits. Then there is a non-price competition. Firms incur a considerable expenditure on advertisement and other selling cost. The advertisement and other selling outlays by a firm change the demand for its product as well as its cost. Product variation is another form of non-price competition. The variation of the product may refer to the change in quality of the product itself, technical changes, a new design, better materials, and it may mean more prompt or courteous service and a different way of doing business. Under monopolistic competition, there is a freedom of entry in the sense of freedom to produce substitutes. New firms enter the market when the existing firms are making supernormal profits, and the firms incurring losses leave the industry in the long run. Thus, we see that under this market, there is a competition among the firms because of the large number of firms, but as their products are differentiated from each other and no new firm can produce or the product and give the name which is already there in the market. So, this differentiation gives a power of monopoly to some extent to each and every firm. So, that is why we call it monopolistic competition. If a firm reduces the price of its product, it will not lose all, if it will attract more customers, and if it increases the price, it is not going to lose all the customers. No doubt it may lose some of the customers. So, that is why monopolistic competition is actually found in reality. And what is the type of demand curve and marginal revenue curve under the monopolistic competition? Under perfect competition, a firm has no control over the price, but under monopolistic competition, just as I told you that there is some control under the hand of the firm because its product is differentiated. So, if it reduces the price, it can attract some customers who would stop buying other products and start buying its product. And if it increases the price, it would be losing some of its customers who will start buying other products. You can see, supposing you buy or you are having the habit of using one type of the toothpaste, but if the price of that toothpaste is increased too much, you will shift to some other. So, the firm under monopolistic competition knows that if it reduces the price, it can attract more customers, and if it increases the price, it would be losing some customers. So, in this case, naturally demand curve will be downward sloping, and we know whenever demand curve is downward sloping, AR and MR are different. When AR is falling, MR is below it. So, in this case also we will find that price would not be equal to the MR, rather price would be greater than the marginal revenue or the marginal cost. This can be shown in the diagram also, that this demand curve is downward sloping. If at price OP, then the seller can sell OM units of the product. If he wants to sell more as ON, he will have to reduce the price to OP2, and if it wants to sell the commodity at a price OP1, then production will have to be reduced to OG. So demand curve is downward sloping. And in the figure 2, we have shown how the AR and MR are falling and MR is less than AR. If OM output is produced and sold in the market, at this price MK is the AR while MR is MG. So this shows that price is greater than the marginal revenue. Why this is MR is less than AR? This is clear from the relationship between AR, MR and elasticity of demand. MR is equal to AR into E minus 1 upon E, where E stands for price elasticity, AR is the same as price. Therefore, MR is equal to price into E minus 1 upon E, or price is equal to MR into E upon E minus 1. We know E minus 1 upon E will be less than unity. So, MR will be less than the price, or price will be greater than MR. Now, we will see how the equilibrium of the firm is achieved under monopolistic competition in the short run. The aim of the firm is to maximize profits. In the short run, the firm can have supernormal profits, or it can have normal profits, or it can have minimum losses depending upon the demand and cost conditions. We are already aware that there are two approaches to find out the equilibrium of a firm. One is the total revenue and total cost method, in which the firm compares total revenue with the total cost, and the other is the marginal revenue and marginal cost method. So actually here the equilibrium is just like similar to that of monopoly. In case of supernormal profits, total revenue is greater than the total cost. So how we will find the equilibrium point? We will draw the tangents to TR and TC, and where they become parallel to each other, that will show the vertical distance between TR and TC to be the highest. And this is shown in the figure also. In figure 3, we have shown output on x-axis, cost and revenue are shown on y-axis. TR curve has started from the origin, it is increasing at a decreasing rate, it becomes maximum and then it starts declining. And total cost curve is not starting from 0 because there is some fixed cost, so it is starting from the point above origin on y-axis, and it goes on increasing firstly at a decreasing rate and then at a increasing rate. Now at OM1, TR is equal to TC, and this R point is the break even point, and from the output from OM1 upward, what you find that total revenue is greater than total cost, but we want to see where it is the highest. So this point is shown by the tangents drawn TT and KK, and here the output produced is OM, where the total profit is maximum. Before this output and beyond this output, total profits will go on declining. In this case, price is not explicit, but we can find out the price by dividing TR by the output OM and can see what is the price charged by a monopolistic firm. Now the other case can be of normal profits. It is not necessary that the firm is having supernormal profits. There may be some firms which are getting only normal profits. So the case of normal profits is there when total revenue is equal to the total cost of production. So in this case, as is shown in figure 4, output is shown on x-axis, cost and revenue are shown on y-axis. TR curve is starting from the origin, TC is starting from above the origin, and at point E, TR is equal to TC. So E is the equilibrium point as well as the break even point. Here total revenue is equal to total cost, and whenever the firm is covering the total cost, we say that the firm is getting normal profits. Why? Because the normal profits are already included in the total cost of production. So OM output will be produced in this case, and AR or price can be found out by dividing the total revenue, which is ME here, by the output sold, OM. So in this case the firm is getting only normal profits, and at all other levels of output what we find that total cost is greater than TR, or there are losses to the firm. In the short run there can be loss to the firm also, because there is some fixed cost, and even if the firm does not get the fixed cost, the firm will go on producing provided it must cover the variable cost, because if it stops producing, even then it will have to bear the fixed cost. So that is why there is a possibility that due to the demand and cost conditions there can be losses to a firm under monopolistic competition. Now in this case, in figure 5, output is shown on x-axis and cost and revenue are shown on the y-axis. TR and TC curve are there, and at all levels of output you see that TC is greater than TR. There are losses, but we have to see where the losses are minimum, and again to find out where the losses are minimum, we draw tangents to TR and TC, and where they become parallel to each other, that will be the minimum difference between TC and TR, or the minimum loss. And total profit curve is drawn by knowing the difference between TR and TC. So this is starting from the negative portion because there are losses or negative profits. So here OM output is produced and the firm is having the minimum loss. Now we will show the short run equilibrium of the firm under monopolistic competition by marginal revenue and marginal cost method. And there are two conditions: marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, and the second is MC cuts MR from below. The case of supernormal profits is depicted in figure 6. Now average revenue is declining, MR is below it, AC is of U shape, and MC is cutting AC at its minimum point. So equilibrium is where MC is equal to MR and MC is cutting MR from below. This is the point E. So you can see what is the output here. OM is the output produced at this equilibrium and price is equal to AR. So MG is the AR or OP, and at this equilibrium AC is MH, which is less than AR. So GH or PQ per unit is the profit, and total profits are PQGH. So the firm here is getting supernormal profits. Now In the case of normal profits, when we are finding it through MC and MR method, average revenue is equal to the average cost of production, and we say that the firm is getting normal profits. This is shown in figure 7. On x-axis, output is being shown, and on y-axis, price, cost and revenue is shown. AR is declining, MR is below it, and now we have to see that MC is equal to MR is at point E. So equilibrium output is OM, and if we take this above to find out AR, that is MH or OP, and at this point AC is tangent to AR, and you must see that MC cuts AC at its minimum point. So here OP is the price and the AR is equal to AC, so therefore the firm is getting normal profits. Now the case of minimum loss is being shown by marginal revenue and marginal cost method. Here again output is shown on x-axis, price, cost and revenue are shown on y-axis. Average cost is above AR, but average variable cost curve is below AR, so that we can show that the firm is getting at least average variable cost. So MC is equal to MR at point E, where the output produced is OM, and accordingly the price is OP or MG, but the average cost is MH or PQ. So the loss is PQ per unit and total loss is PQHG, but this shows that this is the minimum loss. The maximum loss it can cover is from H to this point T on AVC, which is the showing the average variable cost as MT, and HT part is the per unit fixed cost. This could have been borne, or this loss could be borne by the monopolistic competitive firm, but the loss is less. So that is why the firm will go on working. Even if it gets only average variable cost, then also it will be working. So here the losses are minimum, but the firm is under equilibrium. Now we will see what happens to the equilibrium of a firm under monopolistic competition in the long run. In the short run, no new firms enter, but in the long run new firms can enter. So if there are supernormal profits enjoyed by the existing firms, then new firms enter the field. Naturally, when the new firms enter, the market would be shared between more firms, and consequently the demand curve or average revenue curve of the product for each firm will shift downward to the left. This process of entry of new firms will go on till the average revenue curves becomes tangent to the average cost curve, and the abnormal profits are completely wiped out. And we have already shown in the figure 7 how the firm gets normal profits in the short run, and now in the long run also it will be getting the same type of the normal profits alone because of the entry of new firms. And in the long run there can never be losses because there is no fixed cost. we have done that the loss can be only of the fixed cost, but there is no fixed cost, so there cannot be loss to any firm in the long run under monopolistic competitive market. So, because of the free entry and exit of the firms under monopolistic competition, we will find that they are getting only normal profits. So, that will be the equilibrium position of the firm as well as the group. Under monopolistic competition, we do not call it an industry, we call it a group. Why? Because they are producing differentiated products. And one thing more I would like to tell you, that in case of monopolistic competition, because every firm is not producing at the minimum of average cost, so there is excess capacity, there is no full utilization of the plant which is being used by the firm. So, dear viewers, in this lecture I have told you how the monopolistic competition is actually found in the real life, and that is the combination of monopoly plus competition, and because of the product differentiation and competition, this will be getting supernormal profits, normal profits or losses in the short period, but in the long run, just like the perfect competition, monopolistically competitive firm will also be reaping only normal profits. Thank you.
On that note, I would like to thank ma'am for this very enriching discussion, and thank you dear friends for watching our show. Stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you.